Hey everyone, welcome. Today we're diving into a really powerful framework that's completely changing the game for how modern companies handle their data. It's called the Medallion Architecture, and it's all about how you take that messy, raw information and turn it into, well, business gold. Let's see how it's done. So, this is the big question, right? It's what every data team on the planet is wrestling with. You've got this massive, constant flood of information coming in from apps, websites, databases, you name it. How do you possibly refine all of that? How do you make sure it's reliable, trustworthy, and actually useful for something? Well, that's exactly the problem this medallion architecture sets out to solve. All right, here's the game plan for today. We're going to start with what this architecture actually is. Then we'll break down each of its three layers. That's bronze, silver, and gold. After that, we'll see it in action with a cool real-world example, and we'll wrap up by talking about why this whole approach is pretty much becoming the new industry standard. Okay, so let's dive right in. What is this medallion architecture anyway? So, at its heart, it's a multi-layered model for organizing and, more importantly, refining your data. The easiest way to think about it? It's like a data refinery. It systematically pushes data through three distinct stages. And yeah, they're named just like Olympic medals: bronze for all the raw material, silver for the cleaned and validated stuff, and gold for that final, polished, business-ready product. But look, this isn't just about making things look neat and tidy. The whole point is to get some real tangible benefits out of it. This architecture dramatically improves the quality and reliability of your data. It makes it way easier to track where data came from, and it supercharges performance for, everything from your basic reports all the way to those complex AI models.
All right, let's start at the very beginning with the bronze layer. This is the foundational entry point for every single piece of data that comes into your system.
Now, the number one rule of the bronze layer is super simple. You do not touch the data. Its job is just to be a landing zone, to capture every little bit of information from your source systems. We're talking CRMs, server logs, IoT devices, and to save it in its original, completely unfiltered format. And you might be thinking, why keep it so messy? Well, it's absolutely critical because the data coming in is often a total mess. Different formats, weird structures, unverified quality. By keeping an exact raw copy, you create this permanent archive. This is a lifesaver for auditing for sure, but also, what if you find a bug in your code down the line? Well, you can just replay the raw data. It's your ultimate source of truth. Okay, so we've got all our raw material collected. Now it's time to start the real work, the refining process. We're moving on to the silver layer, and this is where the magic really starts to happen. So if bronze was all about capture everything, silver is all about create order from chaos. This is where we take all that raw data and we start applying transformations to clean it up, to validate it, and to give it a solid, reliable structure. This is the point where your data actually starts becoming trustworthy. So what actually happens here? Well, this is where we do things like enforcing consistent data types, getting rid of duplicate records, standardizing formats for things like dates and addresses, and joining different data sets together, like, say, matching up your order data with your customer info. The output is a clean, reliable foundation for anything you want to do next. Okay, our data is clean, it's reliable, so now what? Now it's time to turn it into something the business can actually use. Let's move to the final stage, the gold layer. So, the thing about the gold layer is that it's not for just wandering around and exploring data. Nope. It is highly specific and totally business-focused. Here, we take that beautiful, clean data from the silver layer and we aggregate it into tables that answer very specific business questions. This is the final, polished stuff that powers that sales dashboard the CEO looks at every morning, or that quarterly financial report. When you think about it, all that hard work we did in bronze and silver, it all leads up to this moment. The gold layer is what the business actually sees and interacts with. It's the source of those actionable insights. This is where the data really, truly becomes gold.
Okay, theory is one thing, but let's see how this actually works in the real world. I think a simple retail example will make this crystal clear.
All right, so picture a big retailer. First, in bronze, they just dump everything in there. We're talking raw sales data from the cash registers, website clicks, app usage, all of it. Then, in silver, the data engineers get to work. They clean it all up, they merge all those duplicate customer accounts, when you sign up with 3 different emails, and they join the sales data with the product info. And finally, in the gold layer, they build these super valuable, ready-to-go tables, like a fact sales table to track weekly performance, or maybe a customer lifetime value table for the marketing team. Simple, logical, and just incredibly powerful. So, now that we've seen it in action, let's zoom out for a second and talk about the big picture here. Why does this matter so much? Why is this becoming the new standard for so many companies? If you compare this to the old way of doing things with traditional data warehouses, the difference is just night and day. Where those traditional systems were super rigid and could only handle nice, structured data, the Medallion architecture is incredibly flexible. It can handle both batch and real-time streaming data, and it's built from the ground up to support modern AI and machine learning. And what all this adds up to are some massive benefits. This isn't just a small tweak, you guys. It's a fundamental shift in how we think about data. The result is systems that are way more scalable and easier to maintain with better data lineage and governance. It's just the perfect fit for a modern data lakehouse. All right, so let's just do a super quick recap of our data refinery. Bronze, that's our raw, untouched foundation. Silver, that's where it becomes a cleaned and trusted source for our teams. And gold, that's where it's transformed into a valuable, business-ready asset that's ready to create some real insights. And that really brings us to the final thought here. The Medallion architecture gives you a clear, logical path from total data chaos to real clarity. It's a framework that empowers you to build reliable, scalable, and high-value data platforms. So, I guess the only question left for you is your data ready for the journey? Hey, thanks so much for joining me for this explainer.